not. But so when they came to town, the production company came to town. Now this is 1993, so the Yellow Pages still existed. So they literally called every martial arts school in the Yellow Pages
That's
and
funny.
said, "You want to be in a movie?" Now, who says no to that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right? So we went down, we auditioned. They were like, "Yep, we definitely want to use you guys." So I came back out and I called Sifu Dan, I called Burt Richardson, I called Jeff Imada to ask everybody, okay, so what do we do now that we've been hired for this movie? And I remember Burt told me there's going to be a lot of downtime. There's a lot of hurry up and wait. So take your equipment bag and train while you're down there. Right. Sifudan, of course, said, well, just be nice and, get along with everybody and what have you. And so the the first night of filming, Mark Dacascos shows up. So everybody gets a chance to say hello and what have you. And I remind him that he and I had almost met 8 years previously when Dan Inosanto and Chris Kent had gone down to Trinidad for a big show that my friend G. Anthony Joseph was doing. But Mark had to cancel at the last minute because he got the gig to be Conan at Universal Studios.
In that theater show, I remember that show.
Right?
I saw that as a kid.
So he goes, he's like, "You're Dan Inosanto's student?" I'm like, "Yeah." And that was it. I was in.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was my first venture. Okay, all right. So we're a little bit early, guys, but I want to welcome you. This is interesting for me because even though you guys train together, but at a school or just on your own or what? This is very intriguing.
Right here in the other room of my, we call it the Bat Cave. This is where all the geeky stuff happens on this side, and then there's a mat room on the other side.
All right. Okay. So for those of you joining in, this is episode 272 of the Jeet Kune Dialogues, and I am joined by the illustrious Bob Burgee. Steve Braun, I'm not sure if he's illustrious at all.
No illustriousness.
But so Steve, this is the thing, right? I deduce you must have joined Inosanto right around the same time I did, back in '83 or so.
That's actually, I met him just prior. Like 83. My first Sifu in these arts was a guy named Ray Marr, who lived at that time in Bethesda, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
But Ray had grown up in Hawaii.
Okay.
And then went to college at the University of Washington and worked at his aunt's restaurant. Do you want to guess what restaurant that was?
This is cool.
Yeah. So he met Cjo Bruce there, and then later, when he became he was in the movie world too. He was in LA. So he was at the First Academy, and he's one of the students there. So.
Well, if I could put my hands on it, I could show you my 40-year-old little black address book. Because in 1982, my mom moved from Barbados to Baltimore to start the immigration process for the family. And when I came to Inosanto in '83, and we got to talking, and I told him, that my mom lived in Baltimore, he gave me your name. And I think, is it Mike Finley?
Pat Finley.
Would have been the other name.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So I started visiting Baltimore in '82. Never liked it enough to move there. I hate to say, right? So I ended up in Miami 4 years later. But the other connection, because now, Bob, you started you must be Maryland born and bred, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I could tell because you started with June Ree,
I did.
right?
I did.
Okay. Now,
1979.
yeah. Okay. So, have you ever realized this? Have you ever seen in Letters of the Dragon, Bruce Lee's letter to June Ree about the self-defense show that he was going to be doing on TV? Have you ever seen that letter?
I don't think so.
Okay, check this. Bruce Lee is telling June Ree to make sure that he owns the rights to the recordings. Yes.
Pretty smart.
Yes. Right? Now,
Wow.
isn't that interesting, right? Because in 1970, if I remember my June Ree history correct, 1970 was when the decision to expand from the Maryland, Virginia area was made, and ultimately that's how people like Larry Carnahan and Stephen Oliver and those guys ultimately ended up spreading from the East Coast. But the interesting thing to me is that Bruce Lee is giving business advice to June Ree in 1970 when June Ree is expanding, but with his own JKD people, they contract and he closes and he tells Inosanto to go to the backyard.
And June Ree was huge for quite a while.
Yeah.
When I first moved here, that's where I went to check it out because that's the only thing I knew, right?
Imagine if he'd done similar for JKD and Inosanto.
Wow. I never heard that. Man.
Could have been Cato's Kung Fu schools.
Well, yeah, well, hopefully not. But that
I didn't do that.
Yeah. Have either of you ever gotten into that discussion? The what if Bruce Lee had lived?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
So I've written 2 really short alternate histories where he lives, and in one of them he gets in a fight with this guy named Arnold Schwarzenegger because Arnold's Iron Shack is not making any money, but Cato's Kung Fu schools are. And then I jumped ahead in time and I was like, I wonder what, because so many celebrities, Arnold being one of them, so many celebrities get into politics. Where would have Bruce landed? So I teamed him up with the Green Party presidential candidate, John Denver, and had them running for the presidency of the United States. So that's a little alternate history thing that I showed up.
And that came out of your mind without the use of mind altering.
None.
Like we said before we went live, if you want to geek out real hard, you got
you got it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bob, what about you? What do you think?
Well, it usually Steve will blow your mind with, okay, you think you got surface on something, and Steve will go so deep with it and go, oh, well, this came from, because he's a historian. He's a teacher. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the surface things and the things I know, and then Steve will go so deep. I just kind of sit here with my mouth hanging open and watching. And it's like, wow, just like that. He pulls this story out of his head, and I'm like, okay, well, I never really thought of it that way. I know most of the things that most of us know, and you already hit me with a fact with the June Ree thing, and I actually knew him. So, and I didn't know any of that. But with Cjo Bruce, I don't know, because I always keep coming back to Guru Dan, because I mean, I'm not so sure we'd be doing this if Bruce Lee had lived.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like he was going towards, pulling back on that and, going the movie route. And I'm not so sure he would have gone the way Guru did, with expanding it and doing the seminars and all the things he did. I don't know. But I'm real happy Guru did what he did. I'm sorry Cjo, left so early, because I mean, I've been like super fan of Bruce Lee since I was a kid. I mean, I saw him, you know, when I was really young. We went to a drive-in. It was a double feature. It was the Big Brawl, and Enter the Dragon was the second movie. And I'd seen, you know, little clips of things, you know, on TV and stuff, but I'd never really seen. And I was like, wow, what is this? And I was already, you know, dabbling in Taekwondo and doing that stuff. And then I saw him, and everything changed. It was what is this? I don't even know what this is, but I know I like it. I like whatever that is, whatever that energy is coming off the screen. It just blew my mind. But so we'll back up just 1 second. I was a Billy Jack geek before that.
But you said that was Enter the Dragon is what you saw?
Yeah, at a drive-in.
You use almost exactly the same language I use when I describe the Big Boss.
Did you see that when it came out?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, right. Because growing up in Barbados, former British colony, we were recipients of Hong Kong's number one export, right? Kung Fu films. So you ready for this? In Barbados, every 2 weeks or so, we had our pick of 8 different Kung Fu films. There were 4 cinemas that played double feature.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's awesome. You're like a Tarantino dialogue.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was ridiculous because my first Chinese martial art film was The One-Armed Swordsman.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I didn't see until videotape. I started with samurai movies in Minneapolis at a second run movie theater, but it was, you know, it was VHS or beta or both, who knows?
Yeah, back then.
Yeah.
So VHS wars. Well, so okay, well, I saw The Big Boss, but they didn't call it that. They called it, you know, Fists of Fury. And actual Fist of Fury, you know, Chinese Connection, and is a double feature when they re-released it in the theaters here. So I was able to go to the movies to see them, but not when they came out. I don't know when they were first released in the States, but so you would probably know that. What year was that when you went to see it?
71, I think.
Oh, that was way before I saw it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
71. I was like 5 years old.
That's the year Billy Jack came out. So and,
I know. So now how dare you? How dare you be a huge Billy Jack fan? No, I get it though, because he was a little bit of a phenomenon, wasn't he?
I'm going to take this right foot.
He was pretty cool.
Billy Jack was out. Now, like the second movie, the third movie, because the first movie, we're going to geek out, and I'm probably going to bore everybody, but I have a childhood memory of being carried into the theater to see The Born Losers, which was the first Billy Jack movie with all the bikers in it. And I remember my dad must have gotten there late because there's a scene where Billy Jack gets arrested. And I remember that I was probably a toddler because that movie came out in like 1969. So my dad probably had nothing else to do with me that afternoon, took me to see The Born Losers, but that's one of my earliest memories of that. But I'm a huge Billy Jack fan. Yeah, I love it. Now, Tom Laughlin in the DVD commentary gets into it a little bit and kind of irritated me. He was going up against Bruce Lee a little bit. He was like, "Oh, this is Bong Soo-han. He was before all the Bruce Lees and all this other stuff." And I was like, careful. I was careful. He was doing it way before that. I was like, no, you're missing some stuff here. However, Bruce Lee did borrow some music for Way of the Dragon from Billy Jack.
That I didn't know.
You know the scene, there's a scene in Billy Jack where there's a snake ceremony where the rattlesnake keeps biting him over and over. And there's music in that. They use that music in Way of the Dragon when the mafia guys first come into the restaurant. So go watch it again. Watch both movies and check me on it.
That's cool.
Nerdville.
Yeah, no. So the short, but the Hapkido thing never really caught on, even though Billy Jack caught on, right?
Yep.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Although ironically, there's a big Hapkido presence in this area. So
Really?
yep, there was a guy who came from Korea and opened a real traditional school in Annapolis, and so there are a lot of Hapkido roots in our area. But yes,
But isn't there also a Bando thing?
Yep,
Right?
that's Pat. That's
Okay.
Pat. Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was Pat's and our instructor, John Collins, but Bondo started in DC. So that original core group of Bondo people were in DC at American U and then into the, Maryland, Virginia area. So before.
So are you familiar with the people from the system Kung Fu, Lee Cunningham and those guys?
That name sounds so familiar.
Mm-mm.
That as a Bondo person or as the Kung Fu people in the area? Because there's a whole other tradition with Kung Fu in the area.
So I'm trying to remember the names that G. Anthony has given me over the years. So there's Lee Cunningham and there's a guy named Paul Oliver, and they were the system Kung Fu in Baltimore, but they later got involved with Dr. G and the Bando.
Okay.
Any of that sound familiar?
Nope. But Dr. G welcomed a lot of different people, and a lot of the people in Bondo were Bondo person and X, right? So yeah. So that wouldn't be surprising at all.
So in fact, the way that G has told me the story. So in 1985, he has this big exposition in Trinidad, and he brings Sifu Dan and Chris Kent down to Trinidad. They fly in on Eastern Airlines, for which I worked at the time. So I was able to upgrade them to first class. So to this day, Sifu Dan tells people that it was through me that he first got, a first class experience. And so I went down to help out for that exposition. And I wasn't there when Sifu Dan asked G and Ria, what is it that they train in? And they showed him stuff. And that's how he went in search of Dr. G.
Okay.
Because of their association with him at the time. Right. And now, Bob, you also trained. So you spent a lot of time in the Korean stuff then, because you were in Kuksulwan as well, right?
Yes. So I basically did 3 Taekwondo schools before I found my home with this stuff. So I started in '79 at Junri in Hyattsville. And I was lucky because there was an instructor there. His name was Chuck Biddle, and he was kind of a fighter type guy. And I kind of bonded with him, and he was a really good instructor. And I spent, my early training with him. And then I went to Tompkins Karate, and that was Tang Sudo, a little bit different variation. And there was a guy there named Kenny Klotz, who was like the fighter guy there. Yeah. And he's still known in this area. He's still got a school in this area. And he was great, bonded with him. And I was like, and they let me go to the adult classes because I was really into it. And it was so fun because we got to spar and do all the things. And then they ended up at another school that was a little bit closer to me. And that was Master Choi, and he was right from Korea. And he was the guy that was doing the Kuk Sul. And when we saw that, because there was a sword form in it, and I didn't know any weaponry or anything back then, we were kind of blown away by it. And then, so that was all my Taekwondo stuff. And then I visited a guy in College Park who his 2 sons were boxers, just straight up boxing. And he had a kickboxing class. And that was when I had one of those, when you have those moments where you decide if you're going to quit or if you're going to continue. Well, I had a night in that school that was one of those moments.
Yep.
I thought I was one of the top guys in my school. I was just one of the guys who was one of the better guys in there, and I got my ass handed to me in that boxing school. I did not know how to fight, and it was shown to me by I got the crap kicked out of me, and no matter what I tried, nothing worked. So it was a real weird moment. I was like, wow. You get that period of time where you just don't know what you're going to do next, because I didn't feel like training anymore. I'm like, man, I've been training for a long time at that point, well over 10 years.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. I'm not saying the art's bad. I couldn't make it work against somebody who was bigger than me, stronger than me, and I didn't have good hands. I'd done tournaments and stuff and knew how to spar, but I couldn't fight. I was like, man, this is terrible. So I spent some time with my friends, in backyards and stuff, and we were just trying to figure this thing out. And then I went to a Paul Vunak seminar, and I was like, oh, wow. Just me and a buddy of mine just went to New York. Ron Kozakowski set it up.
Yeah.
In New York. And I went there, and you guys were 10 years ahead of me. And you were in this area, and I had no idea. That's why I'm so mad. I'm like, I'm 10 years behind the curve, because if I had found you guys 10 years earlier, it would have been gold.
Right.
So anyway, I went to a Paul Vunak seminar, and I was hooked because they were doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and we were doing, JKD and straight blast, and was like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm looking for. But I didn't know there was anybody in this area. Still didn't know. It was so underground back then. And then there was a local martial arts supply store in this area called Flying Dragon. And there was a Kung Fu school next to it, Tai Yim Kung Fu. And Tai Yim owned that store. And all of us in the area always would go to that store.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would go buy all the wushu tapes and all the stuff he had, and buy all the things and all the ninja stuff and because that was, it was just after that craze and all that. And that's when I found Mike Krivka, because Mike Krivka had a business card on that bulletin board. And I went, there's somebody around here. He had a JKD logo on it. I went, wow. But it was about an hour from my house. So I trained with Mike for a few years. That's where I got my start. And then ended up finding this guy here. And we've been best friends ever since. And we beat the crap out of each other and wrestle 2-3 times a week. And we're old now, but we still do. I got a little long-winded there. I'm sorry, but
No. But I want so you might be the guy to ask this. What is the essential difference between Kuk Sul Won and Hwarang Do?
Oh no, I can't answer that.
Okay.
I don't know.
I've always wondered, because their uniforms look the same.
And uniforms are cool.
And Hwarang is going to be this big thing. There were the books from O'Hara, right?
Yeah.
There were those books, and they were all over the place. And then, to my mind, they just disappeared.
What is Hwarang Do?
That's the Korean term for basically their version of the samurai arts.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were a big deal. And Michael Ichanis, I'm not sure how to say his name. Do you remember those books? The Steel UDT books? Those were big deals, and then all gone. So I don't know.
So now what's interesting, right? So for those of you who are tuning in, sometimes I'll ask my dialogue partner to send me like a little history or what have you. And Steve, you didn't say anything about how you got started in martial arts. It's like he was born big, as we would say in the islands. You know, he just showed up. Right?
I'm here.
Showed up as a full instructor under Dan Inasano. That was it.
So I started in my backyard after seeing samurai movies. We took a bunch of bamboo and beach towels and duct tape and made weapons and beat the crap out of each other for weeks in my backyard. And then I'm like, maybe I should take a real art. So I'm living in Minnesota, and I started taking a Korean art which I later found out was a front for the Mooney Church. So that's kind of weird.
Oh, I remember those guys. Yeah.
Yep.
God.
And they were big in Chicago too. And it's actually, I was in Chicago when I heard about it. And but that was the ninja craze. And so my friend and I worked all summer to make enough money to go to Steve Hayes' first camp in Ohio. And we went, and we're sitting taking a break one day, and I hear this odd clacking sound. And I look down the way, and there's a guy hitting the telephone pole with 2 sticks. And I'm like, oh, I got to know what that is. That was Cliff Lenderman, who was a person under Guru Dan who was there checking out ninjutsu.
How funny.
So when I get back, do you know him? Have you ever met him?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. I met Cliff in '83, my first visit, because Stephen Hayes was on the roster of instructors and Cliff was assisting him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even back then, Cliff had he had like 1 foot in the ninja world and 1 foot in the Inasano world, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm. He's in Hayes's book. Yeah. So when I get back here, I beeline to Chinatown and get the Filipino martial arts and just am devouring that book. And I'm living in Bethesda. And one day I'm on my way to my job at a videotape store, which is like people under 30 don't even remember. And there's a sign. This gym's gonna open. He's got a whole set of Nautilus equipment, this brand new stuff called Nautilus equipment. And he's gonna teach Jun Fan Gung Fu. And I'm like, I know what that is. Yeah. The second book I bought from B. Dalton was the Tao of Jeet Kune. So I knew who that was. And it was that Ray Mar gentleman. I bothered him for weeks till he started teaching. So I started with that. And a year in or so, he brought Guru Dan out. And we had a seminar at a little VFW. And that's where I met Pat Finley. Pat met Guru because the part of getting your black belt in Bondo in the old days was you had to write a very detailed report, in essence, on another martial art. So as Pat was getting ready for his black belt in Bondo, he researched Guru Dan and researched by like going to train with him. He really deep dived in. So that's how I got started there. And then when Ray left to go back to LA to do movie and TV work, I tried to do some stuff on my own. I just did not know enough. And I fell in with Pat, and that was the beginning. So
what year was that?
Oof. Was I a dad yet? That I was
mid-'80s?
Mid-'80s, mid to late 80s. So I was just, it would be like 87 or 88.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I mean,
he wasn't born big.
No.
Now you got the whole story.
Yeah. So that's, and then
it's interesting because we've been the three of us have been circling around each other for years, it seems, with the whole Maryland connection and the Minnesota thing. I did now. So in Minnesota, you never spent time with Rick Fay or any of those people. You didn't know any of those guys.
When I went to the very first Smoky Mountain camp, I met this crazy guy running around, and that was Greg Nelson. And I'm like, you guys are in Minnesota? What? How did I not know that? But they had to be there at about the same time.
He still is.
Yeah, I just never met. I never met him, and I still have never met Rick Fay. So that's kind of weird. I know.
I've never met Rick Fay in person. I've talked to him on the phone because he used to buy my blades. Yeah, and know of him. I'm a huge fan of his, but I've actually never been in the same room with him.
Well, one of my first photographs that I took at camp in 1983 is of Rick Fay and Cliff Lenderman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've known I've known Rick since day one.
Awesome.
Just like I've known Cass since day one.
Now, was that the California martial arts camp?
That was CMAA, UFC Irvine.
Okay.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Now, isn't that interesting, right? That it's Orange County, because isn't that where Paulson is
That's where
nowadays?
Eric is now.
Yeah.
I go out there all the time.
Another guy from Minnesota, right? So
It's so weird, all those little connections that that we have, you know, which is why I love doing this on Friday evenings, you know, sitting down and talking with people. But Bob, I got to tell you this. I only found out a couple of days ago what that EDGES was an acronym. It is.
Oh, really? Who told
Yeah.
you? Who told you?
I know. I looked it up. I was
Oh.
reading through all your stuff, right? But now, I'm concerned. What happened to Edges Squared? What happened to Tactical Blades? All that stuff.
Well, I don't make them anymore. It's still my official company is that, but now it's all video production and an online instruction and that kind of stuff. So I still have the same company. I just don't make the blades anymore.
Ah.
I retired from that in 2015, was it? Yeah, it was basically, it was a decision. You know, a lot of it was financial and my health.
Yeah.
Because it's not a very healthy activity, inhaling aluminum dust for 2 decades, which is what I did.
Right. I read somewhere that you produced over 30,000 blades.
Yeah, it was about it. When I started tracking them, because I started doing a spreadsheet on it years and years and years ago. Like in 1 year, I think 2006, because when my father was alive for about 10 years, he was helping me. He would do my blanks, and we're, you know, long days that, you know, 7 days a week, you know, all that stuff. And I think 2006 was our peak year. I made about 2,800 blades that year alone.
Wow.
And I made blades for about 21, 22 years, something like that. And it was just constantly producing them.
Well,
but in the early days, that when I was going broke, it was making the fancy ones, you know, mirror polished and all the handles and all the stuff. And one of the guys who helped me gave me a little piece of advice. This is where Chris Sayak, I met him through Steve. That was in the late 90s, right?
Yep.
Somewhere in the late 90s.
Yep.
We met because Tuhan wasn't doing much publicly, and he was sort of coming back out to teach publicly. And Steve was like, you got to meet this guy. Like, he's all blades and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay. You know, it's just so buried in work. I was like, all right, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, he was really into it. And, you know, we had a great partnership for quite a long time. And he kind of did a Steve Jobs thing on me because I was making all kinds of things and fancy things and all these variations. And he wanted 5 blades and he only wanted the cord wrapped handles. And I started looking at, and he wanted to charge more for them. And he was unapologetic about it. And I was real timid. I'm like, nobody's going to pay that. And he goes, yeah, they will, because that's what they're going to cost.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, okay. And it worked. And it did it. He made me do it. And I was like, oh, thank you. Okay, great.
That's pretty funny, because did you see my interview with Harley Elmore?
I did. I know that came up.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And yeah, he had some good insights. I used to talk to him. You know, I miss him. I used to talk to him, you know, virtually every day. He would call me up and harass me and make me laugh. And you know, I didn't go very high in the system. I had a little bit different relationship. Like, I didn't go as high as Harley did, and I'm not a Tuhan or anything like that. I believe I made it up to associate for a little bit. I did study it for quite a while. They had some really nice insights. Once again, introduced by Steve, and we used to do, you know, a lot of that. But I've always had a little bit of a outside looking in thing with a lot of people I work with, because being a cameraman, like, and having there's a little bit of a wall there, and I always kept a little bit of that observer thing.
Mentality.
Yeah, a little bit of the trying to see the whole thing, and I used to talk to him all the time. You know, we were very close. You know, I missed out on like his last few years. We just went different directions with business stuff, and I regret that, not seeing him more at the end of his life. But boy, we were really close for quite a while. I talked to him all the time, and he had those little nuggets. He would get into your brain and make you think different. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah, because I didn't think anybody would pay that for a blade with cord handles on it. Now they were still made with love, made a whole lot of them. They're all handmade. And Steve gave me a hard time. Steve's been, with me, like he wanted to call them Bob's Blades. I'm like, nobody's going to buy Bob's Blades.
Yeah. That was the first name. That was the name that I first suggested. So.
Okay. Have you ever tried looking up Bob Burgee online?
I'm afraid.
You get a ton of Bob Burger.
I got called that in school.
Bob Burgers or whatever it is.
I got called all kinds of stuff in school, and that was one of them.
Little did he know it'd be a TV show years later.
Bob's Burgers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. But Bob, what were you involved in LaVon Martin's first video efforts?
I used to talk to LaVon quite a bit.
Yeah.
She would call me up, and I told her to get the VX2000 video camera, and she got it, and she did some stuff for Eric.
Yeah, right.
Back in the days.
That's because okay. Now that's interesting. Here's another connection. You said that the Sony VX2000, right?
Mm-hmm. Mini DV camera.
Yeah. So I have a VX100, I think it is.
Okay.
Right? And you know why I got that? Because Cass Magda told me to get that camera. Cass came down to Miami to do a seminar for me, and we used his camera, and he was like, yeah, you got to get yourself one of these Sony cameras. I was like, okay. I still have that thing, right? You know what I got the other day? A flip video.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the flip video camera?
I have one in the other room.
He has one of everything somewhere in this basement.
That is the best camera of all time. And especially when you put the little magnetic widescreen right lens on it. I did so much stuff with that camera. And then all of a sudden Cisco drops it because everybody's going to use this nonsense now.
Cell phones. Yeah. Cell phones.
Yeah, so I went on eBay and I got myself a flip video camera, but I don't know if it works. It works. Some days the power comes on, other days it doesn't.
Eric Paulson used to send me hundreds of videos because he's so prolific. He had it with him all the time.
Yeah.
He was always shooting flip video, just constantly.
Yeah. And so now you are the quintessential behind the scenes guy for like 5 different associations or something, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, officially. I got my hands in a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. It's just real quiet.
But you're not also like a web designer, because okay, tell me if I got this right. The first Inasano website, you designed it, didn't you?
I still do it.
Ah, okay.
Simo's on me right now. She wants a new look, so we're going to be overhauling that soon.
Okay, because
she got a hold of me in 2001, I think it was, and she was like, that was through Don Guerin. Don Guerin, because I was an instructor at that point, but she wasn't, and I had been with him for almost 10 years at that point, but Simo wasn't so sure she wanted to do that with me, and that was Don Guerin, who was like, you can trust him. It's okay. You can give him this assignment and he won't burn you on it. And I'm still doing it to this day.
When I was brought into the instructor program, Inasano said to me, he goes, well, you're at least as good as Don Guerin, so I'll bring you in.
Uncle Don.
Don's still around and he's still as cranky as ever. love him. He's a great
yeah.
guy. A lot of people don't know who he is now because
Yeah.
he's been, like off the radar, but he's still
Yeah.
around.
Well, I mean, Steve and I are pretty close to Cas Magda, and if you're close to Cas Magda, the name Don Garin will come up all the time.
How many seminars did I get to go to with you? Was it 2 or 1 with Cass?
He was only here the one time that you went with me.
Well, I think that's the only time I met him in person, and I really liked him a lot. He was great, very technical, and he broke things down really well.
I mean, when we were out back in, what was it, May or June that we were out there, and I took Ron Goldstein because I'm like, look, if we're in LA and we got downtime, we're going to Reseda. You got to meet this guy, right? And so we didn't go like you were going to class. We just went to, I just went to introduce him, and Cass pulls me out onto the floor, right? Well, Eleanor does. And in 5 minutes, I walk away with 2 things to incorporate.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That's every time I go. That's why I always like dual task when I go out. If I'm going to see Sifu, I have a back way up to Cass's, and I do as many classes with him as I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, if I don't go the last few years, every time he's having his CLOT camp, I'm involved with something back here that I can't leave. So I haven't been able to go, but
we have to coordinate, Dwight.
Yeah.
We have to coordinate and like meet up out in California for an instructor camp, and then go see Cass together. So like I'm seeing something forming here.
Yeah.
Well,
we have to get together.
Yeah.
But I started with Cass under Don was like, you should check this guy out. And I mean, I'd met Cass because we had met. Don did this weird weekend. Oh man, sometime in the 80s. It was a tournament on Saturday for his school and Pittsburgh area schools. And then in the middle of the tournament, there was a break, and we did the fighting gurus always wanted to do 1 round of single stick, 1 round of double, long and short, a staff and a dagger. And I fought Don, Pat, Finley fought somebody, but there were a group of us, and we fought in the middle of it. And then Sunday was a seminar with Guru Dan. And so that's when I met Cass for the first time. That was an awesome.
I'm so jealous. That's so awesome.
Just a super cool weekend.
Yeah. I remember 1984, California Martial Arts Academy. But now, instead of being at UFC Irvine, they've moved home to St. Louis.
Yep.
So Cass and I we're in the cafeteria for breakfast, right? And I go to him. I go, hey, how come last year? I'll make this up. Last year we started with double stick, but this year you guys started with single stick. And he picks up a plate, right? And he shows me the circle on the bottom. And he goes, well, you see, Dwight, this is the nature of the art. You could come in at this point. You could come in at this point. The important thing is that you stay with it and you get it all.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I'm stealing that.
Yeah. Right. So when so I used to go out and spend time with him one-on-one. I went to one of his private lessons in Steven Plink's kitchen.
Oh wow.
Wow. Yeah. Right. I held a kick shield for some guy from, you remember Cass trained, he went on tour with Ozzy Osbourne. He was like his personal trainer, right? Yeah. So there was some other musician guy in LA who was a private student at Cass's.
Was it David Lee Roth?
I don't remember who it was, but I know I can remember holding the kick and shield and helping out, for him to train this guy. Cass introduced me to Akira Kurosawa films.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. He's like Steve, Steve doesn't look like a particularly intelligent guy, right?
No, you didn't.
Deep though, deep.
I'm gonna back up. We'll let you guys go at it.
You know, and then you're just so awesomely surprised by how deep he is. Oh,
Yep.
by the way, I told Cass that you were coming on. He goes, "It'll be a good talk."
You can go way down the rabbit hole with this guy. I mean,
Yeah.
get into some history, and he really knows it.
Well, I mean, you know, well, like he probably told you, I don't think we had met before CLAT camp. This year.
No,
We had
had
it, right?
talked at some point. Nope, not in person.
Yeah, but
It's kind of weird.
yeah, your name is, I mean, is just etched in my memory from 4 decades ago. Now you two are not guys who are in the Jeet Kune Do groups on Facebook and what have you, quite intelligently on your part, because that's where we get into all these. In fact, right now, on one page, there's a guy who has this wry sense of humor. So he'll put up a picture of Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, and he'll say something like, let's see, what's the last one? The last one he did is actually this one that I have behind me. Mistakes are always forgivable. And he puts up a picture of it and he says, "This is something that Chuck Norris said to Bruce Lee when Bruce Lee made a mistake." Right? There are people crucifying him,
Losing their
for being insulting to Bruce Lee. And I'm like, what? Really?
That's so silly.
I think even Bruce Lee would find that funny. Right?
Sure he would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are people who take themselves and the whole Jeet Kune Do thing too seriously. It's almost like they think they have to defend Bruce Lee's honor. So I wanted to touch on that for a little bit, because here's one of the issues that I talked about a little while ago. There seems to be this idea that Inosanto is disloyal and sacrilegious because he was graced by the presence of Bruce Lee and he sought to go beyond that.
I mean, he actually did what Bruce Lee taught.
I followed his teachings. I'm helping other people understand his teachings. Gee, I've made some sort of error.
Yeah. No, there's a contingent out there that apparently their belief is there's nothing that we have to do because Bruce Lee did it all for us. So all we have to do is follow what he did.
Might want to reread that book and talk with people that trained with him, because that's not what the man said.
My friend, you're free to stay in the box if you want to.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a really, for me, it's quite an intriguing phenomenon. But I did want to get this answer from both of you though, because, and again, it's based somewhat on that. So here's what people like the three of us are accused of. We are accused of adding on, right? We do not understand the daily decrease concept because we keep adding styles to Jeet Kune Do because we are trained in other stuff, because we might even be certified as instructors in other stuff. So people have heard from me on a regular basis my take on that. So just the two of you just have it that idea of adding to Jeet Kune Do.
You want to go first?
Go ahead. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth, so I can stretch it and say.
None of it's political for me because it's self-improvement, self-expression, and at this point, I'm on the other side of my 50s. I'm in late 50s now, and it's self-improvement. I'm just trying to be better each day or do the best I can each day. And that is what I pull from what he was trying to say. And you can fight over the names of it and call it whatever you want. Now we have gone through, obviously with Guru for, decades, getting our foundations down. It's not just do whatever you want and call it JKD for us.
Right.
You know, we're educated, you know, as best we can be. You know, we're just going as far as we can. But for me personally, I'm not going to fight over that. I'm going to do the best I can and test it frequently. That's why we roll. That's why we spar. That's why we do these things, because does it work? And can you do it now in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s? Can you do it? Or what can you do? It evolves. Things evolve. Saying that, you know, only this thing works well, no, it doesn't. Like, if you look at the UFC, if you want to go the MMA route, like, I'll show you a whole lot of stuff that doesn't work. You think it works, but no, it doesn't work in that environment. But then you can get into self-defense things, and you can get into weaponry and all kinds of different environments. It's exploring all of those things, and it's the journey. But for me personally, it's health and mental health, and, you know, they're connected. You know, my training is my church. We do this stuff religiously. It keeps us from going crazy. If we weren't training, I don't know how we would be. Like, I get depressed if I can't train. So I love it. It is an entire lifestyle for me. And that's what it means to me. Arguing over you added this or Guru Dan, you know, did this or that. I'm like, even Guru Dan, you know, been around him, you know, at seminars where that has come up, and he just smiles and he goes, just train.
Yeah.
Just train. And that's, I try to live up to that. It's, you know, I want to get on the mat most days,
right,
and just train and do my thing and express myself, which when I go back to reading Bruce Lee's writings, I kind of think that's what he was getting at. You know, it's not, you call it whatever you want. Let's not fight over the name, because now you're back into the mess.
Yeah.
We're arguing over something that's like, you do you today, and I'll do me, and hopefully we'll improve. That's how I see it. Your turn.
So I think that, you know, JKD is a set of principles, and this is going to be heretic. I'm going to be a heretic for saying this, but C.J. Bruce was only able to explore so much in his life, and he was doing martial arts, and then he was doing the movie stuff, and those things probably got in the way of each other a little bit. Yeah. Those principles, my 2 cents is, Guru has helped us to see those principles in other traditions. So the Filipino stuff, the Indonesian stuff. Bert Richardson has checked out Zulu martial arts. Hey, you know what? There's a whole bunch of JKD principles within that thing. And so if something attracts you, or it feels right to you, but it's the same principle, then is your fist this way or this way? Does that matter? That's the same. That's the same end that Bob gets to. But it just seems a really weird conversation for people. He talked about unlocking your potential and becoming the best person you are. And these people talk about limiting themselves and limiting other people. And that just doesn't jive. That's just like, oh, those don't go together. I don't get it.
Yeah. When I try to be compassionate towards them and try to understand where they're coming from, I think that what they're, and I'm being generous here, what they're trying to say is that there's enough material in JKD already for you with which you can experiment over a lifetime. I think that's what they're trying to say. My question to that is, okay, where, for example, in what Bruce Lee left us, where would you get ideas on how to train grappling from what Bruce Lee left us?
It was the stand-up jiu-jitsu grappling that was part of that early, curriculum, right? The stuff on the mat really hadn't started.
Those are just drawings that were traced from books in his library. It's not how to train it.
Right. Right.
He did an armbar on Sammo Hung and Enter the Dragon. Then he did an armbar on Bob Baker in Fist of Fury.
Yeah.
Or Bob Baker did the armbar on him, and then he bit him.
Yeah. I tried that. I did escape one time. Didn't work. The guy just cranked harder.
Oh.
Yeah. Didn't work.
You make a good point, though. There you go. It's why would you say this is the only book I have and it's the only book I'm ever going to read? That doesn't evolve.
Yeah, especially if it's the book from a guy who had over 2,500 books in his, right? I mean, if Bruce Lee, so for Wednesday's podcast, I scrolled through because I was trying to find, it was a thing about practice methods in sport, right? So part practice, whole practice, part progressive, whatever. So I'm like, because there was something that Bruce Lee said about the whole. So I'm like, this study is from 1967. I wonder if I can find it in the list of his books. So I'm going through the list. The guy had like 7 books on judo, right? Not one. He didn't have just one book on judo. So who says I'm a devotee of Bruce Lee's? So the Tao is it.
Plenty of people.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I won't even try to dissect that and get caught up in that trap. But I mean, if you feel comfortable just doing that one thing or that set of things, then you're free to do that. That's awesome. If that's what does it for you, great. Doesn't do it for us because I told you it probably has something to do with that pivotal moment that I told you about earlier, right, when it didn't work.
Right.
When someone didn't care what I knew, they didn't care what my belt was, they didn't care, but my stuff didn't work and it messed me up.
That's exactly what Inosanto says was his experience meeting Bruce Lee. Nothing worked. He says it's like somebody telling you this job that you've had for so long is no longer needed. Mm-hmm. Right? So what do? You either quit or you change. But Bob, did you ever sit down and analyze what was lacking in your training versus what those boxers were doing and why yours didn't translate well?
Well, I did. I joined up with them for a little while and spent some time with them. And we did a lot of, it was form stuff and it was 1-point sparring and those kind of things. And we could only kick to the body and we could punch to the body. You could kick to the head in Taekwondo. They were hard to pull off. And I proved it with that guy. I kicked him in the face 3 times and he smiled. He was a bouncer. He was a big guy. But, I dropped an axe kick on his cheek and he smiled at me and went rock'em sock'em robots and smoked me. So that had never happened to me before. And it really did. It messed up my my paradigm. So I spent some time in that gym, with guys who could do that, and then started exploring those things. After I, went home and licked my wounds and was depressed about it, because that's one of those moments where you're like, I'm missing something here. Yeah. I'm not, Taekwondo is great. I think there's all kinds of great stuff about it, but is that all there is? I mean, we're back to that one. Do I just want to be a Taekwondo guy, or how can I deal with these guys? The same thing happened when we started going to the mat. When we started doing shoot wrestling and Brazilian jiu-jitsu in the early 90s, it was like, I don't know I thought I could wrestle a little bit, and I don't know what these guys are doing to me. That blew my mind too. Because usually, all right, so let's nerd out a little bit more, Dwight. So back to movie land. I think it was 1987, 1988, the year the first Lethal Weapon came out. Mel Gibson trained with the Gracies,
Right.
and he does a triangle on Gary Busey at the end of that movie.
In the rain.
You know, they're at Danny Glover's like front yard, and it's all in the water, and he's got the nightstick and all this stuff, and he slaps a triangle on him, and his arm's in there, and he's grunting at him. I remember I was in the movie theater. Once again, I'm all about kicking everybody, back then. It's all about, high kicks and flashy kicks. And he's in there doing this. I'm like, this is BS. This would never work. I'm talking trash in the movie theater. Because I'm from Maryland. We talk trash in the movie theaters. So, man, this is crap. This would never work. That's a bunch of BS. Until somebody several years later put one on me, and I thought my head was going to explode. I went, this is that move from the movie. So once again, there was another, when the grappling came around, that blew my mind again, because I was like, oh, wow, here we go again. I'm back to square one. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yep. I had a similar situation. I had a student that was a priest at Catholic University, and we'd spar kickboxing and stuff. Fine. If he got a hold of me, I could count to about 10 and I'd be tapping. And what? And I thought, oh man, there's nothing to grappling. But Father Brian, 1,002. Oh, that's it. I'm done. I better check this out. So
yeah, it messes with your head, right? Like when somebody gets a hold of you and you think you know what you're doing. Like I tried to wrestle with Eric Paulson once at Don Guerin's place, and he was just doing drills on me. I couldn't do anything to him.
Yeah, that Paulson guy, I remember. I mean, I didn't, but I felt the sensation. You know, to shit your pants when he grabs you.
Yeah, right? That's correct.
Right? Nothing came out, but I felt it. I was like, oh my God. Right?
It's over. It's just over.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible to feel that. So I was looking up the stunt people for Lethal Weapon, because I know that Jeff Imada was in there, but it's Bobby Bass.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Bobby Bass was the stunt coordinator, right? So now you know that Bobby Bass got in Asano the gig with Burt Reynolds for Sharky's Machine, right?
That's where he met Francis Fong.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I don't think anybody else has as cool a legacy as we do in Jeet Kune. I really I don't think anybody does. I think it's us, right? I mean, I remember a few years back, I'm in Atlanta for Train with the Masters, and Jeff Imada shows up because he's there doing I think it was with Fast and Furious 7 or something.
Oh, nice.
Right? I mean, just stuff like that. Steve, tell us about your come to Jesus moment, or one of your come to Jesus moments in your martial art development.
Oh, similar to Bob, I'm well into being, a JKD person, and I am on my way to the University of Maryland, and I'm having a bad day, and I flip somebody off in traffic, New York Avenue in DC. And that guy gets out of the car, and I get out because I'm an idiot, and he punches me square in the face. And I sit down, and I get back up, and until the police get there, I'm chasing him through rush hour traffic. And I went home and I went, none of my stuff works. I'm never doing martial arts again. This is stupid. And my ex-wife and a guy that was a student of Guru's here on the East Coast in Richmond, a guy named Jaff Rett, who we've lost all contact with, we're like, no, that's not the deal. You need to dig deeper and figure out what's going on. And that was that crisis moment of like, oh my God. So, yeah. That was my day, and that lasted for a while. That hung in there, right? And I still go back to like, okay, I kind of galvanized myself out of that. I built myself stronger out of that. But you got to have those craptastic events to test yourself. You don't want them. And most of us try to make those events. I think that's one of the cool things about what we do as a JKD person. We can test ourselves in different situations. Can we do a kickboxing event? Yep. Can we do a grappling event? Yep. Can we do a full contact stick fighting event? Yep. Hey, my stuff works in these different things. That's kind of neat. I'm not going to necessarily get caught flat-footed in any one spot. But if we don't put ourselves into those, like I hadn't sparred much at that point, even though I was who I was, I hadn't really sparred. And that was like, oh, maybe I really need to pay more attention to this. So,
yeah. You know, I was talking to somebody, about the Dog Brothers stuff, and they were not.
I happen to work with them too.
Well, yeah, I know that. And they weren't aware that the Dog Brothers were born out of the Inosanto Academy. You know, it was one of those discussions about, oh, Dan Inosanto, you know, he's diluted the JKD or whatever. And I'm just like, no, you don't get it. Bruce Lee talked about testing stuff in sparring. He wrote to William Chung and he said, everything changed for me when we put the gear on and we went at it full contact.
Mm-hmm.
The Dog Brothers are the JKD approach to stick fighting, and it's born out of Dan Inosanto's teaching.
100% agree. Actually, so go ahead. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
But see, that requires too much usage of brain cells to arrive at the conclusion. And that's the problem.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, just to back up what you're saying, Mark Denny brought up a U-Haul of tapes because he taped everything. A lot of Inosanto Academy stuff in the early days, even with the original 3 founders of Dog Brothers. And the stuff they were doing back when they were doing it, that was another epiphany or you know, however you want to say it, moment. And Steve's involved in this one too. Early date, I saw that first videotape, and Mark Denny edited that first series. All credit to him himself. He had knee surgery. I think it was knee surgery. And he was laid up for a little while. So he got the 2 VCRs. He was doing it that way. It was old school, you know, editing. And he got some expensive ones, so it looked good, but it was old school, you know, analog. Yeah. And he put that series together with Eric Canals and Arlen Sanford, and they used all that old fight footage they had. The first tape, the power tape, is one of the most pivotal tapes I've ever seen because I saw that, and I saw how tall is Top Dog, Eric Canals. He's what, 6'5", something like that, swinging an axe handle and talking about ending you for the night. And I was watching him swing that, and then just watching these guys with real sticks, with minimal, they barely wore anything. Yeah, like some guys like a batter's glove and a fencing mask. Some of them tried the helmet, but then they went to the mask, so it's even less protection. I mean, just the minimum you can wear. And these are thick sticks, and they are really going at it. And I saw that, and it blew my mind. I went, "You guys are insane." Really? Well, then we tried it. And the first time I tried to do that, Steve stabbed me in the throat right under my, because of course he comes right in with some fencing, and I'm coming at him like with the, I'm going to get you, you know, I'm going to rush you and come get you. And Steve just went gurk, and just this little elegant shot just stopped me and just dropped me to my knees. I'm like, okay, back to some more research.
That's when I think we were like, you know what? We're good for each other. We're going to be working together for a while.
It was like, oh my God, I'll never forget that shot. It just dropped me. It's just so quick.
Well, I mean, to me, that's the thing. When people say, oh, you know, you concepts guys, as they like to call us, I don't use the term to describe myself at all. But you're adding this and you're adding that. And it's like, they don't realize, no, everything's being tested. So a ton of stuff is being dropped.
Oh, right? Yeah.
You know, you're whittling and you're whittling stuff down to that which works, which is the which is like a cardinal Jeet Kune principle,
That's the point.
right?
And as we're all here north of 50, you got to remember things would have changed because that guy was getting older.
Yep.
And, you know, what worked 10 years ago? Nope.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff gone.
And
right?
Guru says that all the time,
Yep.
too. He
Reinvent
tells
yourself
every 10 years, it's going to be something different. Like something else is going to fall apart and you're going to have to change. And he always said that. He goes, it's the maintenance. That's the hard part. It's the maintenance. And he told us, I'm pretty sure we were together when he said it. He goes, I worry about my instructors because sometimes they get so busy teaching all the time that they're not taking care of themselves. It's your own maintenance that you have to keep up.
That was the last time.
It's a delicate balance. It really is a delicate balance. But it seems that it's something that you've conquered. But how much is it? 52 pounds in that? I saw a picture of you.
Yeah, this is like after like COVID, like we're coming out of a really weird period of time because I was training twice a day, like forever. And then COVID happened and I didn't have anybody in here for a year. And I gained a ton of weight and it just, just eating bad, and all got, kind of depressed, but, not enough to shut me down, but just got into a weird funk with that. And I just decided, this was the year I was going to kind of get my mojo back and just ate a little less, walked a lot more, and I'm running now. Now I run 5-6 days a week. I'm such a nerd. I have a treadmill right here next to my desk. So I'll get my, I do about 5 miles a day right now. And I run exactly how I look. I'm this little old guy, just kind of doing my little steps. I do the best I can. You know what the best thing that like the get out of jail free card is? I'm doing my best. I just say that all the time. Yeah. So if I have a bad day on the mat, I'm doing my best. We use it on each other all the time. Yeah. It's like, all right, yeah, well, I did my best today. Yeah. It worked because then it doesn't matter, right? You surrender to the process, and there's no ego involved. And we really go at it in the other room, and we grapple a ton. Because we can do a lot more of that. We've knocked each other out and all kinds of stuff like that. But start getting older, you start losing brain cells. We wrestle a lot now, and you can really go at it with the submission grappling and not really get hurt. You got to be careful. You don't want to have anybody spaz out on you and break anything. But we trust each other, and we can go at a pretty good level. And we learn. But Steve's is such a C-lot guy. He's big time into C-lot. He trained with Pa Herman and he's all up into the C-lot. So what we kind of do is, and I'm CSW, like all of my grappling, like I'm Eric Paulson, ground up. So we're kind of CSW, Steve's C-lot. We pull out the hitting and things like that because then we're getting into MMA territory. But with the grappling part of C-lot, we'll do, straight up grappling. And once again, it doesn't matter what you call it. It is what it is. It either works or it doesn't. So we stay very free like that because Eric Paulson's like that. Eric Paulson's kitchen sink in there. Yeah. Doesn't matter. He's C-lot in his stuff too. So we'll get in there and grapple. And then Steve will go, okay, now for these last few rounds, let's have a C-lot flavor to it because he's trying to work something out. Yeah. So we'll set up scenarios. It's like, how would you enter on this? But we're functionalizing something that you might typically see and taught in, put your arm out in a form kind of thing.
Or static.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it like ground versus standing or could you make that takedown work on a Shudo guy or a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy well, let's find out.
Or just somebody that's resisting.
Or somebody that just isn't going to let you have it. Well, we go in there and we play. We just play. Let's see.
I call that JKDizing your material. That's what it is, right? you know. And I mean, I can remember seeing Paulson do that, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if. Let me ask you, Bob. How much of Paulson's stuff can he just come up with like this?
Okay, he's got this weird. He's like a wizard, and that, I'm not trying to be like goofy.
Right.
I've watched him do that so often that it's just kind of how he is. Now he can be very, he can rattle the curriculum off, all day long. Like it's in his head. Like he can just do that. And I've been with him forever. I'm at it right here on this one back here all day. That's my job. I'm looking at Eric Paulson all day, most days. That's part of my job. And I'll go to a seminar. We just went to one, and he'll pull out a move. I'm like, I've known you forever. And what was that?
Yeah.
It's just there. He's so creative.
Yeah.
He comes up with so many things. And like you said, he has internalized that JKD principle. And that's what I'm attracted to. The people I want to be around are like that. They're very open-minded and they'll try things.
The other two people I've seen who operate like that are Inosano and Magda.
And
same. Yeah.
Herman did the same thing. Like, where did that come from? It just and he explained it. He had the concept in his system was called Pechihan, which means broken glass. So when you drop a glass, it's going to break, and then you pick an identical glass and drop it the same height. It's going to break different.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he explained. Well, I can't. The energy was just different. I can't do this now because you did that.
Yeah. Well,
Same.
Inosano tells that story about training knife disarms with Lacoste. And so he does one disarm, and then like 7 different disarms later, he does the original. And he's like, that's the one I wanted you to show me. And he was like, well, it didn't flow. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
I want to, Bob, I want to talk about Paulson a little bit more.
Sure.
Because a few minutes ago, you talked about the shoot wrestling thing, right? What was that? The first Shudo competition, was it 93 at the Inosano Academy, the old Manchester Avenue? Yeah.
The amateur ones. Yeah. Pat Finley fought in that.
The Great Shudo War.
Yeah, that's where they wore the bubble face shields.
Yeah, right. Now, that preceded the UFC, didn't it?
Was that before the UFC? It was around the same time.
It was a few months before.
I was going to say they're almost simultaneous. One might be a few months before, but
Shudo could have been that.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going with this. It could have been, couldn't it?
Yes.
But somebody held on to it real tight. And when you hold on to it real tight, it doesn't propagate.
Yeah, I don't know what all the business decisions were there.
So that goes back to that other conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Shudo could have been that.
Okay. All right. So now here's another thing. Is there a Paulson connection to UFC 1?
There could have been.
Okay. Is it something we can talk about, or is it?
I won't get into any names or anything like that, but he decided to go to Japan to fight. And he was supposed to have an amateur fight. And he went there with Yuri Nakamura, Sensei Yuri. And Chad Stahelski was with him too.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Chad on Joe Rogan recently, and I can't believe it never even came up that Chad actually fought.
I should have done that interview. I should have done that.
Right?
Okay.
Like talk about like this guy's background. He's way before he was, movie director and famous and all that, but he's legit. Yeah. He's the real deal. And so he went over there, and Eric was supposed to have, I think it was an amateur fight, and he ended up fighting pro and doing very well. And he ended up being light heavyweight champion twice in Japan. It was amazing. And that thing could have gone crazy. But yeah, he never fought in the UFC. He fought in some other events,
Right, yeah.
you know, some other stuff. And then there was I remember getting in a major argument when we were silly. We were all emotional about it. That one where the guy pulled his hair because Eric was doing movie work and TV work and stuff.
Oh, I don't like to talk about that one because that guy James is a Miami guy, so I don't like to talk about that.
Well, it's nothing personal on him. But we were so mad. It was Eric cut his hair after that.
Yeah.
Because the girl who braided his hair was like, "This won't come out," and it came right out. And the guy just went like that and just kept it. And it was like, "Oh man, we got so mad." It was like, but it was legal. It was legal on those rules on that night, so it was okay. But he's made out of some different. Now Steve has a cinder block head because I punched him in the head enough. You got you know, some of those guys, like you hit them, just stuff doesn't. They're made that way. Eric is one of those guys. He's made that way. Like he's really tough. Some guys are tougher. And you know, he put in all the hard work and all that kind of stuff.
He's a Minnesotan, isn't he?
Oh yeah. Well, have you ever heard the story of how he started in our stuff, Eric Paulson? Like he got the door slammed on him by Rick Fay.
By Nelson and Rick Fay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a well-known one.
Yeah.
He brings it up every chance he gets.
When I was at your doorstep.
Yeah, remember when I wanted to come in and play, and Greg goes right along with it too. Greg's amazing too. That's another guy. It's funny. I kind of refer to Eric as the wizard, and Greg Nelson's like the engineer. Mm-hmm. The two of them together, it's magic. Just what they play off each other so well, and they've got that Minnesota thing, that dry humor, and and Greg is another guy. He's just everything he does works. His clinch game, and Greg's not a big guy. He could throw anybody. You just can't get a hold of him. He'll throw you right off your feet. You just can't do it. He's amazing.
Yeah, I have a quite a fond memory of him and Rick Fay at the end of a day's training, getting their tie pad rounds in before nightfall, and I retire to a bunk in the cabins. They pitch tents, those bastards, right? Tough little guys, you know.
Oh yeah,
right. So that was Dan Timlin's Mid-Michigan camp in 1987.
Oh wow, that's before me.
Right? Yeah. And then in 1988, we're back at camp in Michigan, and it's before training starts. And Rick Fay and Greg Nelson are working out trap into grappling sequences.
I mean, Greg, to this day, even after surviving 2 cancers and going through all the stuff he went through, still trains like that.
Yeah.
He's always on the floor. He's a machine.
Yeah.
And Eric's like that now too, like because Eric had his issues with his neck, you know, several years ago. Mm-hmm. And him too. Like but that's why they are who they are. It's that work ethic, and we like to model that too. You know, just it's the work ethic.
And that's why I'll close with saying this. I think we have the coolest martial arts family. I mean, I'm sure everybody thinks that about their people, but it's like somebody posted on Facebook the other day about Inosanto around his birthday time. I think it was Burt Richardson. Who else?
Another guy,
right? Has produced fighters, coaches, actors, stunt people, whatever.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Right? So, yeah.
I'm with you, and I'll get into the controversy on that. Yeah, we got the coolest.
Yeah. Definitely the best.
I'm with you all the way. I stand by that.
Yeah.
I think we do. All right. Well, okay, gentlemen. Any famous last words for my listeners?
Put in the work.
Yeah.
Keep training.
Yeah. All right. So, Steve, I took Ron over to Cass's, and he looks at the upcoming seminar schedule. And he goes, okay, I think we'll be back at the end of September for Fighting Tactics of the Masters.
Yeah, that's a great seminar.
Right. So
Yeah.
we went out to that. A group of us from Miami went out to that a couple of years ago. So we're going to go out this year. And then this one I've never done with him. It's the Wooden Dummy and Chisao seminar.
I really want to do that one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to do that one.
Yeah. I think that, so you know, we're going to Atlanta next month. Right. So I really want to see like the way Cass approaches Wing Chun stuff, you know, versus what how Sifu Fong does stuff, because I think there's a lot to compare and contrast there. So yeah,
definitely, yeah,
it's all so cool.
Yep,
it really is.
It's so cool. There's probably about 50 names we haven't even mentioned.
Yep.
We're gonna be on here for 7 hours.
Yeah. You're quite right. But we'll do this again for sure.
Cool.
All right.
Thank so much, Dwight. Really enjoyed
it. My pleasure, man. My pleasure. You guys take care.
See you soon.
See ya. All right. Okay. Nice one. Those are some cool guys. All right. That was episode 272 of the Jeet Kune Dialogues. So you guys know the deal. Go ahead and comment. I'll ask Bob and Steve to see if there's anything they need to reply to. You can follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. At jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this. The Keep Calm and Learn to Fight Ferociously. I keep asking people if anybody can guess where I got that Learn to Fight Ferociously thing from. The Keep Calm, you know, is a British thing. The Learn to Fight Ferociously, here's a clue. It's somewhat British also, right? jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link. At here on the YouTube channel, click the join button and you'll see the different levels of membership that you can use to support me here and my efforts. And over at paypal.me/unifiedma Miami, the Jeet Kune Journey Volume 1, raw but edited version is available. paypal.me/unifiedma Miami. Next Friday will be open panel discussion. And I talked about this on Wednesday. And we're going to take another look at curriculum stuff. How do people incorporate or integrate Bruce Lee's stages of development, stages of synchronization, stages of a technique, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. How have people used those things to develop their training programs, their curricula at their schools? If you use a ranking system, how does all of that tie in with your ranking system? So that'll be next Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. On Wednesday, of course, we'll have another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast. But yeah, until then, until the next episode, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off. You guys have a great weekend. Take care. Talk soon.